You are now entering the Cue the Muses podcast. Please reserve submission of any joy meter statistics until after the program.
Hello.
Good evening or good morning, listeners. How is everyone? Ash, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. Just staying busy as always. Classically busy. 7-day work weeks.
Dodging the man, dodging the clock, dodging sickness out there. All part of the daily routine.
Yeah.
So today, listeners, and today, Ash, we're going to talk about tone. We're going to kind of go total 100% musician nerd on you guys, which I love. Music nerd, musician nerd. We're going to talk about gear, and then we're going to talk about tone, and we talk about, how one perspective I have as a father now, thinking back on my life as a musician, is how that first amplifier that I got affected a couple of things. Affected how I played, affected the development of the style and the tone that I ended up using. Because there's famously my favorite amp, like my go-to amp, is a PV-5150, and notoriously amazing amp, Eddie Van Halen design. And my first amplifier was almost a 5150 Mark II. My dad was breaking down, biting the bullet, going to buy me an amplifier, big Christmas present or birthday present, I can't remember. And at the last minute, I changed my mind and I asked him for the Line 6 flex tone. And the flex tone was the Line 6 pod in a head. And the reason that I did that was because of the versatility and the onboard effects. And thinking back now, I mean, if I had to choose same amount of money, which amp, hands down, I'm going to buy a 5150. I'm not going to go buy a flex tone. But oddly enough, the fact that I ended up with the flex tone really did shape, my creativity in a much different way than I think it would have had I gotten a bare bones 5150 out the gate.
Let me ask a question about that. So you're saying that you got the Line 6. So this was an amp itself, or did you get the classic red kidney shaped?
No, this was
the pod.
This was
okay.
the Flex Tone Mark II is what I had.
Okay.
So
and it was all built together with amp, cabinet, one unit.
No. It was a head. It was
really?
200-watt head.
Wow, you went straight for that.
Analog head. Yeah. So that, I remember it was when it first came out, the combo that my father bought me, it was the head was $1,000. The Line 6, that Flex Tone came out fresh off the press. It was $1,000 head. And that I got that with a Marshall 412 1960A cabinet that I still have. And that Flex Tone, it was the same thing as a little kidney pod. So it had all of the same settings, the same cab simulator, the different distortions, the different amp modelers, the different effects, and more importantly, there was combinations of effects. That was really rudimentary. Like you couldn't pick any two effects. You had certain effects, and then you had certain combinations, particularly the chorus flange combination. Really kind of dove into.
My starting point was the pod, but it was the actual kidney shaped one. I got that. I got the floorboard, and then I had like a crate amp / cabinet, just one unit. I can't even remember the size of the speakers. I didn't even think about it at the time.
Probably like a GX 212 or something. Those
probably so. I think it was like 212s in there, and it kind of. The pod itself was pretty cool. I think that, in fact, the first recordings, I took that all the way to the first recordings that I did in the first band that I was in that made it that far to do real recordings, which was Kill Clouseau. And I took that with me to the studio at Lee Dias's Earth Sound Recording. And I knew I didn't have an ear yet. I didn't have an ear yet to really hear the difference between tube heads and the different levels of distortion, and I just really wasn't like tone wise, I just knew I wanted distortion, I wanted delay, and I liked the idea
Yeah.
of chorus on some clean stuff. And the pod pretty much accomplished that, but I understood apparently, because I couldn't hear the difference, that, and I hadn't gone to play on other equipment, that the distortion is kind of the weak point. It's the hurdle that these digital multi-effect like units had, was trying to get that tube head distortion. There was always, each brand kind of had its own little artifact in it of a giveaway that it was digital.
Yeah.
And and so I told Lee Dice when we got in that studio, I was like, look, I brought this. There's definitely, I think, I don't know if we want to use it for part of it or none of it, but I'm open to you inventing my guitar tone. Like I haven't gotten to be around this. You've got a ton of stuff. I would just love to see where you put my guitar tone. And I gave him the reins. And we did use the pod for some of the effects on the clean stuff. But when it came to distortion, we went with, his heads. He had similar to Brett, multiple heads and just running, different combinations of that.
Yeah, I remember early recordings that I did too. Similar circumstance. I had that flex tone, and the flex tone, just like the pod, they kind of had this. They had one of the early cab simulator functions where when you plug it straight in, you could turn, and it had an option. I remember my flex tone had like a little button, a hidden button, and then it gave you options that weren't written on the head. But if you had the booklet, it showed you what they were, and it was a cab simulator. And went through different 412s to a 410, 210 kind of simulator. It had all these different sounds. But plugging it in, that's what I remembered, with just what you said. I remember it really did well with clean tracking with effects. And then when you hit to the distortion, it really didn't matter. When I played live with it, I never used the cab simulator. I purposely turned it off so that it just ran the signal to the 412 cabinet. And I remember my young, tone deaf ear thought that sounded better. I'm curious. I would be really curious to see what, which one, because another guy in town had the same head as me. Bobby from Core had the same head, and we ran totally different settings. And he always ran the Mesa simulator on there. It had like a Mesa Boogie rectifier simulator on the distortion channel. I always ran the Line 6 Insane. Was my
all right. It's funny because you're mentioning even the cabinet models, and I think at the time I didn't know what to do with that, but I believe that option was also on the kidney-shaped pod as one of the dial selectors. You could choose the different cabinets, and I just didn't even. I literally had no idea. To be honest, my interest was just in learning the guitar, and I was like, I got to learn this other stuff too. It didn't, as much as I wanted it to excite me, it didn't until I started figuring out some sounds that actually inspired entire songs. That's when I was like, oh, I really like effects. Like, because there was one in particular, I want to say I had well, at that point I might have gone on to the Boss GT8, of which I ended up with 2 of. I wanted to upgrade from the pod. Boss GT8, single effects multi-pedal. It was all there in one unit. You didn't have the kidney shape and then the separate pedal. It's all one unit, and there was this ability to change instantaneously, whereas there was just this slight gap when you would hit between effects on the pod. There would be just the slightest little break, and it was like, fuck. I mean, it would really drive me crazy. And that didn't exist on the Boss GT8. Now, it could have been that I didn't know the right settings on the pod, but on the GT8, out of the gate, I was able to switch. And getting to the point of this one tone, there was like almost like, it was like a violin synth typey sound, had a delay and everything. I was able to dial it in with the right stuff. And it inspired this song called Carousel, and it was like one of the cool. It was actually the song that ended the entire album. Oh, you remember Carousel?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, that's where it started. Was that one? That effect started that whole song.
That was the violin cello-y effect that the Boss had. And thinking back, I can't remember if mine had that delay. I know that delay you're talking about. It's almost like you have to press the button and then it's the release. that is on
Yeah,
the
maybe so.
I've played other people's rigs back through the years, and a lot of different just feels in those pedals. And maybe early on it might have been such a thing where it was the processing power. Like if you had a channel like where you stacked multiple effects and saved it, it may have been an amount of processing power, to
Yeah,
get all that
true.
loaded up when you changed
It's
live.
very,
It
very
won't.
possible.
Yeah, and and then I've even played his name's escaping me, I'm sorry, but he was recently a guitar player for Tragic, but he used to play guitar for 27 South in Tallahassee.
Okay.
And he had a rig, and he was at a place in Wakulla that was like a local jam house, Severn Jet's house in Wakulla. And he was there playing. He had his rig, and I played his rig for a little bit, and it was latency. Like when you record and you have a delay, his rig had latency to the string.
Yeah.
And I said, how on earth do you perform like this?
Dude.
He's like, you get used to it. You get used to it. I was like, wow, it was so alien and
Do
weird.
you really get used to it, or is it just an unawareness and it's
Well, I think
as a young musician?
I think the way that he played, like it was the rig that he had, you know what I mean? You adapt to what you have. And like that was just a rig that he had. And I think he just made it work.
Actually, this brings up an interesting idea, which is that the most notorious thing that guitar players do in the studio is rush. Right? Like we're always playing ahead of the beat just slightly. Like that's the thing you keep having to rein back. So if you have latency, maybe, and live, you always end up playing faster live. So if you have a little latency, maybe it puts you perfect. I never thought about that.
I don't think it works.
I don't think so either. I'm trying to be generous. But that is definitely a thing. You go to play live, or you're playing on a recording, and you go fast. It's so hard, especially when you're excited live. Number one thing people do is play all their material too fast. It loses the groove, right? And it's just so hard. And when you do play it at the actual tempo that you recorded it at, sometimes it feels like it's impossible that we recorded it this slow, right?
Yeah. When you go back to it, you're like, no way, because then you spend the next couple of years, performing it, and things change. I mean, subtleties change, and the nuances don't come till later. And then 9 times out of 10, you're like, man, I wish we'd re-record this one because it's a completely different song than it was before. And then
which is interesting with our project, because we never had that opportunity to let it shape itself. It's not like we got to perform Cue the Muses material and then gradually kind of see what's working, what's not, and then you figure out that's actually, we didn't get to do any of that. We got to hear it become something, and it was such a different experience. And I'm just so relieved that it came out as cool as it did, because it really could have been sterile. It could have been, just kind of dead and kind of not had enough direction or style, but it all ended up working. So you can definitely, there's no limitation on the ways to approach recording, and this method can obviously still work, but it's not the only method, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it helped that that Brett's such a good engineer that it really he capitalized on all the strong points of it. So the two songs that are out, we've got I call it Two Bears. It's My Soul is an Element with Nadira on vocals, and Afraid, which we called Cult Classic. And the reason I say two names is those are working titles versus the final title. And so when we tracked those two songs, both of those songs, you and I in the studio took a little step away from our comfort zone guitar wise. I think on both of those. I think on My Soul is an Element in particular, because I know that on My Soul is an Element, that was a song that I used one of Brett's single coil Telecasters for that song. And that's actually the reason that I purchased and modified the Telecaster that I'm playing in the video, because we were using our guitars. I know I was using, all the guitars are dual humbuckers with a coil split is what I like to play. And on that particular song, I wanted to use his Telecaster that he had hanging on the wall. It was like a LTD Telecaster, and it really just gave it a snappy a snappy attack that humbucker just doesn't have.
Yeah.
And Brett's the guy who kind of opened my eyes up. Like forever, I was like, oh, a guitar player, you got to have good, mean, nasty tone. You got to have it's got to be a humbucker, and not only a humbucker, it's got to be the active one. It's got to be.
Yeah.
And then he was like, nah, man. He said single coils what cuts through the mix. He was like, he let me hear one of his songs from Virgo's on this. I think the Virgo's second album that you can only listen to on YouTube. And I was like, man, that guitar is just, it sounded so good. And it was just cutting through it. I was like, what is that? He said, Dan electron, baritone, lipstick, pickup, single coil. I was like, not the guitar I expected him to say at all. I was like,
it's interesting.
Yeah, the lipstick, single coil, baritone.
Yeah.
And then that's when I started realizing playing with different pickups is such a different feel. It cuts to a mix when it's a dramatic change on a recording, but with pickups, it's more or less making you happy more than the overall sound. I feel it's not. Do you like with your two guitars, with your LTD versus the Gibson? Like how does the active pickups in your LTD versus the passive? I think your Gold Top's probably got 500T.
That's right. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I assumed that the active pickups would just always be the more aggressive. This coming from the standpoint of not having honestly played that many guitar rigs, right? And I just see so many of the guys using active pickups, and I like active pickups. Makes it more complicated to dial in your effects because it's kind of sending a different signal, and then you put on the Gibson, the 500Ts, they're passive, and so now everything kind of either sounds flat or it's like it's off, so you got to make adjustments, which will lead to something I want to talk about later. But the 500Ts in that Gibson are crazy hot. Like it's like that is the thing about that guitar I think I might like the most, is like how hot and aggressive it feels. And I remember talking to Kelly Love, the guitar player for Eli, who has more guitars than anybody else I know personally, other than like maybe somebody famous I met. But for somebody that's like in a quasi-famous, local legend band, this guy's got so many guitars. He's had so many rigs, and he said he has a Gold Top just like mine, same reissue, 1969 reissue. And he said, I am telling you, that is the hottest guitar I have. There's something about those pickups that is just hotter than any guitar I have. And I was like, oh, really? Because I thought it felt hot, but I didn't identify that it was like, again, limited amounts of rigs that I played on. So very cool to kind of hear him say that. And that guitar is, well, I mean, I just absolutely love it. But I've never sold any of my guitars, and the other electric guitar I have besides the ESP is an Ibanez. And I did two things to it that I now regret as a guitar player. It was the first guitar I ever got. It was the guitar I was supposed to learn how to play guitar on as a kid. Sat against a wall, warped, couldn't stay in tune. Is that what it is?
Oh, no. Oh, you're talking the one that is it broken, or the one you still have?
I still have it. It's a green. Oh, that's
one.
Yeah, it's a green one. And that my dad bought me that guitar when I was in like 6th grade as an endorsement to learn how to play guitar. I wanted to learn how to play guitar, Yeah,
that's it's an S series Ibanez for the people listening.
Okay,
I know your guitar. That it's a Joe Satriani. It's not a signature, but the S series was Joe's design.
Really? Okay. That's crazy interesting. All right. Well, I like that guitar and everything, but what I did was when I first started playing, I got the ESP and I liked it so much. I mean, out of the gate, the ESP was just awesome. It had the EMG pickups in it, just rocked, felt so comfortable. That neck is the most comfortable neck for my hand. Out of all the guitars I have, if I needed to, play faster or something more complicated, that guitar is the one that I would go to. So I liked it so much, and I was getting so frustrated with this Ibanez that would always go out of tune because it had a Floyd Rose pickup on it, had the whammy bar set up, could never get it to stay in tune. I didn't know how to get a good tone out of it. I didn't give it the right love and equipment. And so I ended up having somebody do some modifications to it. I put EMG pickups in it, And then
Oh,
he,
did you took it to a shop and they changed
it's a
it?
particular person. I'm just not going to mention who.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
know why.
yeah,
It's just a weird, the person got kind of weird. And
yeah.
so, and then he did something that I loved at the time. I was so happy that he did this, but I want to reverse this now. He put something on an invention that he came up with called a Z plate. And that Z plate made it a fixed bridge instead of a floating bridge. So now the whammy bar wouldn't function, but the guitar stays in tune great. But now that I'm like a better, much, much better player, I have other guitars, I really want that to be a free floating bridge. I want to be able to put a whammy bar back on it. And I kind of wish that I still had the original pickups to know what the hell that sounded like, because I don't really, to be honest, I'm not crazy about the EMG pickups in it now. Like, I just don't think it's a good match for that guitar. So if there's a guitar that I'm...
The ones that came with, I'm not sure what it would have came with, but I know that feeling, because it is a very dramatic change when you go from passives to actives.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that's the thing. I don't even know I don't know if my Ibanez I didn't even know about active and passive pickups. I just knew, I didn't even know that even when I got the EMG. I'm sorry, the ESP. And I just knew that I liked this guitar and I liked these pickups and I want those in this guitar too. And so he put the same exact ones in there.
It's an EC1000, your ESP.
That's right.
For the people listening, you're playing it in the Afraid video. You're using the ESP. So and I know that guitar. I had an EC1000 back in the day. I had one of the silver burst ones. And kind of like Adam Jones from Tool has a silver burst Gibson that he plays, like a Les Paul with the silver burst. But what I didn't like about it is the back was, instead of being black, it was all silver. So the back of the neck was silver, the back of the guitar was silver. The only black on the guitar was just the outline of the burst. But I remember playability when that guitar was new. The playability was amazing. It really was a good playing guitar. Mine got damaged. The neck got damaged. And up getting rid of it. I sold it and I traded it towards that Engel Powerball.
Okay, nice.
But it's like, so that guitar that you would have to search for the original pickups that came in that Satriani.
Well, at this point, I'm kind of just curious as I'm now learning more about pickups and stuff. I think I want to experiment, but I want to actually have a month where I can just kind of explore that more. Get a set and give it a try, like pick out something I think would be a cool combo for it. But
well, I have we're talking a little off topic, but I change pickups in my guitars all the time, and I've gathered kind of a collection of pickups that, if you look back here, you can actually see it. All these boxes right here. Those are all
crank up that 4K.
Those are all pickups. Yeah. But so I recently changed out. I have one guitar that I got. It's an H1000. It's the newest model guitar that I own. It's an H1000, the LTD H1000. It came with the Pegasus Sentient combo, and I changed them out as soon as I got it, and I really because I didn't realize something yet. So Seymour Duncan came out with two sets of bridge pickups at the same time, like 8 years ago. It was the Seymour Duncan Pegasus and the Nazgul. And the Nazgul was marketed as the metal pickup, like the new metal, detune. Both of them were like for detuned guitars, but there were the Nazgul, the heavy metal one. The Pegasus was the proggy one. And I gravitated towards the Nazgul. I got the Nazgul. I put it in a guitar. Then I got this new guitar, and I paid full price for it. It's one of the most expensive guitars that I own, which was like right at $1,000 or something. But it came with the Pegasus, and I pulled it out, and I put the Nazgul pickup in it, and played it. But then I took the Pegasus pickup and put it in a different guitar, and then realized immediately that the Pegasus pickup was the best sounding pickup to me that I had ever played.
Oh wow.
That purchase for that, it made that, because I didn't really like that guitar that much, but the pickup, I put that same pickup in 3 different guitars, and I I started buying Pegasus pickups and putting them in all my guitars because I loved it so much. It was just such a great sounding pickup. It wasn't that high gain. It didn't have as much output, but the fact that it was a little lower output gave me a lot more possibility with tone, as far as, you know, rolling back volume, cleaning it up, changing its sensitivity. And especially when you start stacking effects on it and playing, like my favorite pickup with effects, with a heavy delay and you know, and a flangey chorusy type of reverb, is the jazz pickup with a coil split neck pickup, the Seymour Duncan jazz neck pickup with a coil tap to single coil. That has this weird breakup that happens when you do a volume swell. That has, if you're on a distortion channel, so your volume swell down, it's clean, and then you swell up into the note, and it has this weird breakup when it transitions from being clean to being dirty, about that 3/4 way. It just does something that other pickups don't, and I can't.
Is that what you used for the swelling effect in Dark Place, the song that's not out yet?
Yep, in Dark Place, that older guitar that I have, that I played in the section when we did it.
Well, here actually we can cue up that snippet from episode 1 of Cue the Muses, the scripted sci-fi full production show, where we actually play this to grow mushrooms. It's a tease of the song to come in episode 4, and here we go.
Two, three, four. These aren't natural. This is nothing that exists.
You kind of missed a couple of notes on that first part. Threw me off a little bit.
Get over yourself.
Well, I just wondered if it messed up the mushroom.
And yeah.
The Ibanez was in there too. Yeah.
You didn't track it with the Ibanez, but it's in the.
No, I didn't track it with the Ibanez, guys. It's all just a mirage of visuals. And before we get too far away from it, I just have to make a note that's interesting. It's a side note too, but in reference. So you're talking about that Pegasus pickup. You discovered that while we were writing our album together, and. And I think one of the reasons maybe you tried it was in the script, the AI that we were battling was not called Harmonia until after the script was pretty much written. And the original name for the AI that we're trying to defeat in the show was Pegasus. That's the name that I had landed on. And then found out that Pegasus was a legit real spyware, Israeli spyware that's being implemented in the world, that's actually getting into secret, like it's breaking into all kinds of secret stuff in America. And I was like, we can't name it this now. And so, and then Tim came up, who we had in our last episode, our drummer, and we had him in our last podcast episode last week. And he came up with the name Harmonia, and we really liked that, so that's why it switched to that. But it's just funny that you fell in love with Pegasus. Here's that word again. I wonder, those are the pickups you loved.
It kept coming back, and the Pegasus pickup. I don't know anybody out there that really clamors on about it like I do. I think because the majority of people, when they came out with those two, like the Nazgul was just marketed as the cooler pickup for metal, and when okay, so to get technical with it, the only difference between those two pickups, really, the biggest difference is the magnet type. So I mean, a guitar pickup is steel wrapped with copper wire on a magnet, and the magnet material of the Nazgul is a ceramic magnet, and the magnet material for the Pegasus is an Alinco 5. Now, I will say the Alinco 5 magnet is the same type of magnet that's in your Gibson 500Ts, and it's when I started playing around, because another pickup that I had is a Seymour Duncan made a custom pickup for Dimebag Darrell from Pantera called the Dime Bucker. Little different construction with the pole pieces. They're rails instead of individual cylinders, but it's a ceramic magnet, and it has a certain scooped quality to it that the Alinco 5s just have more like an old school, a little more mids. It's not as scooped, like metally sounding, but they just have that. It's that good feeling to me. It's you don't have to EQ in a bunch of mids. I like having more mids than less. I like my mids at like 1 o'clock, but those Pegasus pickups just sounded so good. I ended up getting Seymour Duncan to make me a custom pickup. I designed one through their custom shop. They got a really cool, user friendly design your own pickup, and I did that after the Pegasus, and I told them, I want my pickup to be 70% Pegasus, 30% JB, which is like their other hot pickup. And I really like the ones they made for me that are custom. They're thicker than the Pegasus. They're just a little meatier, like when you chug, it just has a little more low end. But man, for writing music, like if I play a couple different guitars, and we almost touched on this earlier with the effects, because a new effect will inspire you, and you'll write a song. You said earlier, you wrote a song around an effect. And with me, it happens with either a new guitar or just I have a couple guitars now, and I'll play one for a long time, and then I'll play one that I haven't played in a while. And then there's something about that.
I agree.
It's different. It feels good. And a lot of times that just cues inspiration.
I agree. I think that's something that I don't hear people talk about much, and it's an interesting experience that I've consistently had as well. If I pick up a different guitar, in particular, especially if it's a guitar that I actually get to sit with for, let's say, 20 minutes or something, not just testing it, trying a couple chords. Yeah, that feels good. But actually getting to sit with it for 20, 30 minutes or an hour, and it's inevitable that I will have come up with something that I never really would have thought to come up with on the other guitars that I have, or the guitars that I've been playing consistently. And it's interesting. I don't know. That's why I've personally never sold one of my guitars. I've got every guitar. Not that I have a huge collection, but I've got, I have 3 electrics, and I have 3 acoustics, and I'm not planning to ever sell them. I mean, I just plan on adding to that, because for me, I never would have come up with the songs that I did without those guitars. I'm very connected, I feel, to the guitar as part of the inspirational force that kind of brought that particular song about. And the ESP really was, I did not have the gold top until the second Kill Clouseau album. So the whole first album and our EP, all that was really just exclusively written on that ES 1000 or EC 1000 that I have, the ESP EC 1000. And that guitar will never be sold, I mean, as long as it's not stolen. And it's interesting too, because I took that guitar when I did have the Gibson. when I made it back, it's funny because I had just the ESP. I remember taking it to Lee Dias. I recorded with it. And Lee he's like, that is a great guitar. This is a great guitar. Like, he just kept picking it back up, and he kept playing with it. I was like, okay, well, that's cool. It's the only guitar I've got, so I'm glad he likes it. Then later, I had the Gibson Gold Top, right? And I go record with Chris Bittner and Michael Birnbaum at Applehead Recording, these guys that recorded Coheed and Cambria, Medeski, Martin and Wood, B-52s, Black Crows, stuff like that. I bring in this Gibson, you know? It's like, I have got, now I feel like I've got gear, you know? I've got this guitar, right?
Hold on, guys, sit down. I've got a Gibson.
I've got a Gibson Les Paul. So, you know, he's a serious guitar player now. And I said, and I started recording, and dude, they fell in love with the ESP. They're like, this guitar this is an amazing guitar. And they kept wanting to use it more. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, if you guys say so, then last example, there's a guy in town, Gary Hudson. He does, you guys can take your guitars to him. He does intonating.
He's a luthier in Tallahassee. Yeah, he's a luthier. He does guitar repair, and he builds.
He does, and he builds them. Yeah, and so I've taken my guitars to him to get them dialed in a handful of times. First time I took my guitars to him, he wanted that EC 1000. I took him both that. Dude, listen to this. I took both that and the Gold Top. Okay, I had him dial in both of them. I didn't say shit about this guitar, like people like this guitar, right? When he lets me know that your guitars are done, he's like, hey, I got a proposition for you. This EC 1000, are you interested in selling it? I was like, the same story, right? I was like, no, man, honestly, I wrote so much with that. I love that guitar. And then he said, well, it is a great guitar. I mean, are you sure you wouldn't be interested in selling it? You don't even want to explore like a price for it? And I was like, honestly, man, no, I wrote my whole first album and a half. I really learned how to play guitar on that guitar. It's a special place in my heart. And he said, well, the last thing I could offer you is like, I would literally give you one of my handmade guitars for this guitar.
No.
And one of his Folkstone guitars. Yeah, I don't even know how much those cost, but I imagine it's a few $1,000s. I don't know.
It's a hand-built.
It's a hand-built custom guitar. Yeah. Although this is an acoustic guitar, and this is an electric guitar that he's trying to get. And I turned it down, and I was flattered. But man, isn't that interesting how much people have gravitated towards that particular guitar? Last part of the story. I'm so sorry. I promise I'm going to let you run a rant in a second.
Keep going.
I got that guitar because the guy that I didn't mention the name of before.
Okay. Yeah. The guy
that did the stuff to my Ibanez that I asked him to do, and I loved that he did at the time, right?
Yeah. Put the V plate and the EMGs in
the Z plate. He put his, and it's great. Like, dude, he didn't do anything wrong. He did exactly what I asked for. I just personally realized as a better guitar player.
You made a mistake.
I made a mistake. And he said, I was like, what kind of guitar should I get? Like, literally, at this time, there wasn't a Guitar Center or anything. There weren't as many places. There was Scott Tennyson's guitar. That was, like, kind of it. And there was Musician's Friend. And I didn't know how to go pick out a guitar because I didn't even really know how to play guitar that well yet. So I asked him, what guitar would you recommend? And he recommended that guitar. I ordered it out of the catalog. I never played it.
You didn't play it. It came to the house.
I never even knew what it felt like. I didn't know what it sounded like. I ordered it on his recommendation. It came in to, which one was the one that was on 5th Street or whatever?
That was Music Exchange.
Music Exchange. It came into Music Exchange because at the time he worked there. And it arrived. I went in. I got it. I walked away with it. And then the rest is history. But isn't that crazy? Like, I never even played that guitar.
It was that long ago. That goes to show you that, guitars are mass produced. And you're talking, I mean, an ESP LTD EC 1000. And that was probably when they first came out with an EC 1000, which is the Les Paul style. So I'm guessing that was probably in the early 2000s. If it was one of the early, I'd like to see the next time I'm there. I want to look at the imprint on the headstock because a couple different versions of the LTD print and how
Mm.
it's written. But it just goes to show you that they always vary from guitar to guitar. They come off a line, they're mass produced, but they're just not all the same.
That's right. And I just lucked out completely. And it's interesting too, because the Ibanez that I have, I had no idea how to pick out a guitar then. I just ended up with that guitar. And then the last electric guitar that I got is the Gold Top. And I mean, this is going to sound like I'm spoiled, but I swear to you, this is just a weird circumstance that worked out this way. My father-in-law ended up with that Gold Top out of a trade deal for a truck and a guitar for this motorcycle thing. It was just like some weird random kind of backwoods trade that happened, and that guitar was wrapped up in it. And he notoriously kind of lets things stay outside a lot. Like, he didn't have a way to protect it that much. He let me he wanted me to hold on to it in the house. I was living out on the property. Me and my wife and Tristan had our own house out there. And he just ended up, over the course of a year, he said, you know what? Honestly, that guitar is yours. And I mean, so I didn't pick that guitar out either. I just kind of ended up with these guitars. And that was like the coolest present that anyone has ever given me, is that guitar. And I will never sell it. But that's pretty wild, man. Like, it's weird. I haven't gotten to go pick out an electric guitar player as a guitar player.
Yeah, you haven't gone and like done the sit down, play this one, play that one. Like I know the experience. I've done both. And so the guitar that I was playing in that snippet of episode 1, where we're playing the intro for Dark Place, that is one of the least expensive guitars that I ever bought. And it's an LTD H250, and the 250, it was $250. It was like, that's the lower end. Now, it came with different pickups in it. But when I picked it up, I found it at Guitar Center in Tallahassee back when Alex Manor was the manager. And I was in there, and Alex was there, and I said, hey, it was on the walls up high, I think. And I grabbed it, put it down, and I started playing it, and Alex walked by, and he did kind of a typical salesman thing. He's like, oh man, that's a cool guitar. Can I see that? I hadn't even seen that one yet. And he grabbed it, and when he grabbed it, he said, oh, that neck's good. And I was like, I've been playing it for 20 minutes already, so I knew I liked it. But it was just like this little inexpensive guitar just played.
But you think he was faking that as just a salesman?
I gotta say, I know Alex, and I know he's a musician. I know he's not, I was back in the day, like, I used to get a lot of stuff from Guitar Center. So I knew, like,
that's hilarious.
I'm going to buy it.
Oh, wow.
Man, he said, man, this is like, the first thing he did was, oh, that neck. I was like, yeah, it plays pretty good. But that guitar changed everything for me. Because that was the first guitar that I changed. It came with passive EMGs in it, which I think are the really dumb pickups. I don't mean anything. It's the lower end guitars. I don't think they're active. They're called EMG HZ or EZ or something. And it's like, inexpensive guitars come with what's called Duncan designed pickups versus actual Seymour Duncans. And I could go into pickups for way longer than we have on this podcast, especially with 45 minutes now.
Yeah,
but
I know.
I mean,
we're definitely not going to get to talk about every gear thing I thought we'd. We're going to have to do a few episodes on gear stuff, because there's definitely more stories to talk about. But continue. We're gonna make it to our hour. Yeah.
Yeah, those EMGs, a pickup is just, like I said earlier, it's just wire wrapped around a rod on a magnet. And the EMGs that came with it weren't necessarily bad. But then I took, the one nice pickup that I had, and the reason I was shopping for a guitar is I used to have a pair of Samick Torino guitars, that green SG style, the one guitar that I had at your place. So the one that I had at your place is the oldest one that I've had. It's EMG active pickups in it. I bought another one, and I put the Dimebucker, Seymour Duncan Dimebucker, the one I was telling you about. And in that guitar, that was the worst sounding playing guitar. That other Samick Torino that I had. I have one that I love, and this other one was absolute garbage. And it was garbage when I got it. It was garbage when I had the Dimebucker in it. And I was so disappointed. I was like, this pickup sounds like crap, and it shouldn't, because this Dimebag's pickup. I was so disappointed. And I got in a car accident with the car. The guitar in the bag broke. The neck broke in half on this guitar, and I kept it around the boat paddle. Anyways, years later, I'm a Guitar Center. I buy that $250 H250 ESP from Alex, and I go home. The EMGHZs are dumb. I buy a Seymour Duncan Jazz pickup, ordered it off the internet, and then I put that Dimebag pickup in there. And when I put that Dimebag pickup in that guitar, that solid mahogany neck, maple top, mid 2000s H250 inexpensive guitar, it was just like the lights came on for the first time. That guitar combined with my first tube amp, which was an Egnator Vengeance. And then after that, I bought a PV 6505. And when 6505 came into play with that guitar, with that passive Dimebag pickup, that was when the light clicked. And I said, I'm starting to understand what I want my tone to be. Like, this is what tone is. It's like, but what was I doing? I was playing a solid mahogany guitar with a Dimebag Seymour Duncan through a 5150. I mean, that was that was the other side of that. But to me, it was like, it was that pickup. I was like, man, the pickup in that particular guitar, because it sounded like shit in the other one. And it had to be just the build of the guitar. You know what I mean? They varied guitar to guitar.
Well, and then the EMGs that I love in my ESP just don't sound right in my Ibanez. The Ibanez sounds totally different with those same exact pickups. So it matters what guitar combo is with the pickups. It truly does.
Absolutely. And it comes that, there's even down to neck design, know, because I think, if I remember right, does your Ibanez have a maple fretboard? Is it the light wood blonde?
Yeah, it is, and it's a bolt-on.
It's a bolt-on versus a set neck. It's a maple fret versus a rosewood or an ebony fret. The EC1000 I think is an ebony fret. And those all the differences stack up. I mean, they do. Weird with a pickup. It turns into, your average listener, if you plug it into an amp with distortion and you play riff on one guitar, and then you plug in another guitar and you play the riff with that guitar. Now, I know from just recording, from a listening standpoint, there isn't a whole lot of difference in the pickups being translated through the audio. That's why I said earlier, this is more about the player and the feel and how that guitar and how the tone reacts to your hand, through the pick, through the speakers, through everything. And the pickups are a big part of that feel. It just doesn't translate that much to a recorded audio. It's weird. It's even different in the room because you can feel more bass in the room, right? So when I played two guitars the other day with Timbo in the room, when I picked up my guitar with my custom after playing the one with the Pegasus, he immediately registered, oh, that one's got a little more bottom end to it. Right. And I was like, well, yeah, it does, but it's weird. That's how good an ear that he has, because he picked up on it immediately. The tone, the slight tone difference.
Well, and the other thing that gets complicated about these tones and this constant chasing of the perfect sound is that ultimately, at the end of the day, in a live setting or in the mix for an album, the sound engineer or the recording engineer is going to manipulate that EQ, and they need to remove a lot of that low end to get you to sit in a mix and give the room to the other instruments to take hold of that. So it's like, a lot of times, even though we get this tone that we want as a single guitar player playing a cab in a room or something, the shape that's going to happen to it by the recording engineer, so it actually doesn't turn to mud with everybody, is still it's actually going to get cut off a bit. Like, you're not going to have that chunk that you think that you finally got. It's kind of getting cut off again.
Yeah. Well, and so, man, there's a bunch of places to go with that statement that you just made.
I know. We've got to hold on to certain things for other episodes, right? Like, because they are full episodes of conversation.
Yeah, no, they totally are. The classic
Yeah.
one is Metallica's "Justice for All" album.
Okay.
You know, James wouldn't let go of that frequency, and that's why you can't. That's why you can't hear Jason, the bass player.
Oh, no way.
That's
That's the
that's
backstory to that?
Yeah. If you never heard it, there's a cool YouTube video. It's called "And Justice for Jason," where they remixed it, and it sounds appropriate, you know, and you can hear the bass. It sounds incredible. I love it so much.
I've got to look that up.
Yeah, it's "And Justice for Jason." It's the entire album.
Beautiful.
It's worth a spin on a good stereo. You'll hear the bass cranking,
cool.
sounding good, and it's such good playing too. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But that's why, you know, everybody said, oh, they mixed Jason out, they mixed him out, and it was like, well, it's because the EQ. Like there's a podcast or something I heard where they talk about Jason liked a certain tone that came from his stacked Marshall. He was stacking amps. I think it was a Mesa Boogie stacked with a Marshall JCM or something to get the
Jason
tone.
Or James? James, you mean?
James Hetfield, the guitar player. James had a tone on his amp that he did not want to lose on the chunk. And like that's what tone, like there's only going to be one thing living in that spectrum of the EQ, and it was James, not Jason. You know, the bass, just the fact that the bass couldn't be there, that's kind of like why you can't hear it, because they cut it from that EQ range.
Damn. Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, and you know, what's interesting, and maybe we'll bring this to a close a little bit, is that with the sound, like the way that I can hear sounds now versus back then has not only been shaped by just playing more over the years, but I didn't expect for this to happen, but the video editing has made my ear way better. Because I've had to go in and I have to remove so many background frequencies and think about the timbre of people's voices, and if it's too draining, you know, like if it's got too much, if it's too bright or too brittle, you know, there's all these nuances. And then I'm also mixing audio with the music, and I'm having to cut out frequencies so that way we're talking about mini doc style branding videos for companies. You wouldn't think that this is like ear training for music, but it's like after doing this for 20 years. When I returned, I got better and better. And in particular, the last 10 years, I took a 5-year break from guitar. And when I returned to guitar, I had this ear for guitar tone-wise, that I never had before in Kill Clouseau. And it's like I hadn't been playing music. But when I went to like start, I was like, I knew what I liked and didn't like. I knew when I was like getting a tone, I was like, I don't like this. I want more of this. I never had that ability the whole time I was playing. I mean, in Kill Clouseau, I did have some comprehension, but it wasn't like the handle on it that I feel like I have now, about just easily knowing if I do or don't like something and understanding how it might fit with something else.
Yeah, you found yourself with the seat time manipulating and adjusting exactly what you use for a profession and your passion. Which is guitar.
And it's not, but it's just weird because I'm not mixing music. I'm just putting audio of people talking to music beds that I'm picking out, and then mixing in Foley sounds, you know, fake sounds, and figuring out levels for that. But you're listening during that time in an edit, it's headphones, you know, you really have to know everything, because you don't want once you put a video out on YouTube for a company, in particular, if it's going to be one that generates a couple million views, you can't replace it. You're stuck with whatever it has. So you don't want some audio mistake sitting in there that's just painstakingly obvious, or you hear somebody talking in the background or whatever it is. So you're trying to dial it in as much as possible. It's a lot of pressure. Make sure it's perfect. So you're listening, and it's, you know, 100 hours into an edit. And then I come back to guitar after like a 5-year hiatus from Kill Clouseau to returning back to playing again.
With a brand new set of ears.
It really felt that way. It really, and that's when I got my first tube head instead of going with the multi-effects pedal. And that is a whole conversation to itself, and I'm going to stop there.
Well, I knew you had an ear just from the comments when we were going back and forth with mixes, and we were making edit notes and stuff, you know, and and you had comments on compression levels on vocals that I didn't comprehend, because I didn't have
Okay.
that. I don't have that background that you do with adjusting things to sit in those kind of pockets. I record
Right.
music, but I'm notoriously more of a plug and play. Like, I find a setting that I like, I think it sounds cool, and I leave it there, and I don't think about it too much. And that's why I'm not the best audio engineer in the world, because you have to, there was no option with a
Yeah.
contracted video edit, right?
And
Contracted video edit you get.
absolutely.
You don't have the option to not make it perfect.
That's the thing. That was the thing that made me get better fast. Is I somehow weaseled my way into some good paying gigs that I wasn't qualified to make. Felt totally overwhelmed. The pressure's on, and I had to deliver. And I just no matter what I got. And it doesn't mean that I did nail it. But I did better than I'd ever done on these beginning projects. And then you just do that for years and years. That being said, without doubt, I know for a fact that when it comes to natural intuitiveness, I feel like I really have. There's something about putting together visual video stuff that I just feel like that just kind of like I naturally know. But when it comes to audio, it's always just been so much harder for me. Like, I respect audio engineers so much because they still, I witness them hearing things and talking about things like, I didn't pick up on that at all. And it'd be interesting now, when we went with Brett this time, I could hear a lot more than the other recording sessions that I had in Kill Clouseau, so I was able to be more sensitive to it. But I still in no way feel like, putting together a full mix with all the tracks that are involved for albums and stuff is so beyond my wheelhouse still. I still think that's a whole other gamut of skill set.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why we go to Brett,
Yeah, because he was trained, and he told, I don't remember his story verbatim, but I know that I asked him, how did you get so good? It's just like, man, how'd you get so good at this? And he just he looked at me, he said, I got really lucky that I got trained very young, by a professional. I think I don't know. We got to get him on the show to find out, because I don't know if he interned with somebody. I texted him earlier today, and I was like, hey, there's a show. He was like, oh, sounds cool. Let me know when it's done. I was like, it was Katie's birthday. He's like, oh, happy birthday, Katie.
He's got to be a guest on this show soon. We are going to start doing hopefully more guests soon, guys. Like, it's we have the intention of having on, I would like to have on, more guests, period. We need to help them figure out how to have a little setup so we have decent audio, and just it doesn't have to be a great camera. We just get them in here. As long as they got a good internet connection and decent audio, that's the number one, and video can be very mediocre. So we're going to try and reach out. We want to get people from the band. We want to get actors. We want to get other people doing stuff.
If any of our peer group is listening, like, you have, if you want to ask or submit to be on the show, let us know.
Yeah, please.
I'm gonna go to Off the Record first Wednesday in September. Ash, they all want you to be there, and I know you got a lot going on, so it's that Wednesday. I think get
7:30. Is that when it is?
7:30. They get started 7:30. Maybe we'll get started in there in the studio if you can make it. Show up. But they do a great podcast. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Usually runs really long. I think the only time I was on there, we ran like 2.5 hours.
Okay.
But we had like 6 people. It was me, David Rowe, Kurt Rogers, Jason Cupp, and then also Jeremy Jade. Rob wasn't there, but I think Bofa came and hung out with us. But it was a lot of people in the studio, a lot of conversation. There was a lot of drinking going on that one too. I remember that was more. It's one of those kind of environment.
Gotcha. I'm going to try to make it, man. I legitimately want to be there, and I'm going to try to make it. That's the night that I am supposed to be on. Wednesday nights are my night duty with my 1-year-old, because my wife puts together her flower arrangements that she always delivers to Red Hills on Thursday mornings. So she gets all the orders for the week.
They're beautiful. She gave me one time. It's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, she does amazing. I love her. It's like they feel like wildflowers because it's very different than the normal bouquet. So anyway, on Wednesdays, that's the day. So it kind of depends on how many orders she gets, how long she has to work. So if it's a light week, I should be able to get over there as long as I'm not
Okay.
Feeling
Well, I
pretty
don't
good.
want to like say fingers crossed for a light week and she doesn't do well.
I know, that's why I'm like, I'm not rooting for that, but I'm going to go with the flow. If I can make it, I'll absolutely give you guys the heads up and I will dash over there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
you heard that, Rob, Jeremy, and Jade. I'm definitely gonna be there. Ashley, of
yeah.
course.
Yeah. Sorry,
We'll see
guys.
how-
I'm going to try to make it. Wednesdays are the hardest. But that dude, I enjoyed getting to talk with you. I'm going to get back on some editing here. I got edits due in the morning. And then I go out of town for my brother's wedding. He's 18 years younger than me. He's in Louisiana. He's getting married in Baton Rouge to his bride-to-be. And
Awesome.
so that's where I'll be the rest of the week. And we're supposed to leave on the day that the hurricane's supposed to hit here. That's why we've pre-recorded this, even though this is coming out on Friday. The hurricane's supposed to hit Wednesday. We'll see how this all plays out. And hopefully we didn't get caught in a storm.
Yeah, hopefully not. Oh, I
Yeah.
will say, no promises on this, but I'm flying to DC for something in October. And I'm going to be really, really closest I've been in 15 years to a former bass player and friend of mine who lives up in Maryland.
Okay.
Right. And I'm going to maybe because I'll have my laptop and everything. So I'll bring the webcam. Maybe if I can, maybe we could ask Mr. Eddie Maldonado if he can sit.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Podcast.
Yeah.
You remember Eddie?
I remember Eddie. We never knew each other well, but we always were very nice with each other and always like running into him. Yeah.
Oh, he's such a great dude, man, and he's a
Nice.
professional chef out there. I'll ask. No promises, but I'm gonna. If I'm up there hanging out, we might be able to do a quick 15-minute thing or something.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll try to swing something. All right. That sounds good, man. Well, more to talk about in the next episode, guys. And I hope all you guys are doing well. Again, we are Cue the Muses. We are part of Cue the Muses, and it is a scripted sci-fi rock comedy show, guys. You can check out the episodes for free. We have 2 episodes out so far. We got more coming, and it is a thing to itself. Inside each episode is a new music video, releasing a new song off of our album. Please tell people we exist, and we love you, and we will catch you on the next episode of the podcast at a minimum, right?
At a very minimum. You did great. You're better than I am. Later, guys.